You idiot! The missing link
The
to
missing
what?
link.
To what? To
Cause you ain't seen a big butt before.
What's good, y'all? It's the Dumashettes React, and we're back with another video. Who we got today, C?
Today we're back with another American reaction. Super excited about this video. If you're new to us
And we're new to you,
make sure you scroll down,
hit that subscribe button,
and turn on the post notification bell
because we're on the road to 200K.
And we cannot get there without you guys, alright? Join the family. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
Sarah Baartman, also known as Saki, was born in 1789 in the Kamdaboo Valley, located in the eastern part of South Africa, formerly known as the Cape Colony. She belonged to the Khoi tribe, a traditionally pastoral indigenous group who herded cattle in the region. Yet, with the beginning of colonization in South Africa, this way of life was taken away. Her parents were enslaved and were put to work on a colonial farm. Sadly, Sarah's mother died when she was a small infant, aged just 2. She was described as being independent and hard-working from a young age, but given her circumstances, that was her only choice.
She was sad in this picture.
When Sarah was a young teenager, her father was also taken from her, having been killed by Bushmen while doing his job as a cattle driver. The Bushmen, or San, are the oldest inhabitants of southern Africa, who to this day live as hunter-gatherers. As was common at the time, Sarah married young. Her husband also belonged to the Khoi, and he worked as a drummer. Not long after, Sarah gave birth to a child, yet sadly, the baby died not long after being born. During the 1800s, a free black trader named Peter Cesars came across Sarah Baartman, later convincing her to move to Cape Town, which was just recently under the control of the British. Although records state she was persuaded, given the situation at the time, it's more likely that Sarah was forced to go. She worked in Cape Town for 2 years, first as a nursemaid to Peter, and later as a servant to a Dutch man.
She probably was forced to go. Being that he just took over, I wouldn't want to move up there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but I wonder... We need to look more into, like, the slave history of South Africa.
yeah.
This was the place where she would be renamed to Saki by her new Dutch masters, as it is a diminutive form of her name in Dutch. This small detail in changing her name demonstrated the amount of control that the Dutch had over these people. Although legally, Sarah Baartman wasn't enslaved, in a more practical sense, she was. She lived in poor conditions while in Cape Town and was treated similarly to others who were enslaved there. It was also around this time that colonists killed her fiancé. Following this, she began to work in the household of Peter's brother, called Hendrik Cesars, which was outside the region of Cape Town, today known as Woodstock. During her time at Hendrik Cesars' house, Sarah worked as a wet nurse. This job consisted of lactating women, breastfeeding the child of another, and was typically done by extremely poor women.
There was a lot of that.
While working for the Cesars, Sarah became involved with a poor Dutch soldier named Hendrik van Jong, who lived near Cape Town. Yet, the liaison didn't last, as before long, Jong's regiment left the city, causing Sarah even more heartbreak. For years, she continued working as a servant and wet nurse, until one day, she made the acquaintance of a Scottish military surgeon called William Dunlop. As well as having a medical practice, he also supplied British showmen with rare species of animals. After Sarah caught his eye, he presented her with an opportunity to earn money in England by exhibiting her body at the circus. But what was it that he saw that was so fascinating or unusual about her body? Well, Sarah had steatophagia, which resulted in massive buttocks caused by built-up fat. In the early 19th century in
know.
Britain, crowds became intrigued by the weirdo.
I didn't know there was a scientific name for our butts.
Well, I knew there was a scientific name for it. It's called a donk.
Gluteus. Oh,
Yeah, our gluteus maximus.
yeah.
But the donk, or the wagon. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so rare species of an animal, and I see this woman. I've never seen a big butt like that. What?
She wasn't hipped on what the circus was back in the day then.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
she would have
probably
never
not,
took
though.
she would have never took that job.
Right, but did she know?
No, probably not.
But okay, so it's just their minds. I try my hardest to think like a person would think back in the day, but it's like today. Your hair, it's so nice.
Hey,
How did you get it to braid? Like, baby, I remember one time a lady touched my afro. That was I bet I'm the last afro she ever touched.
You rub your hands in there.
Oh, well, I can take.
Okay.
Oh.
You know, it's like they wasn't familiar with the features that we carry or the way we, you know, sprouted ourselves out. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like, it's kind of funny almost.
It makes us feel away. Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, so you mean to tell me that wasn't one woman in y'all time where y'all was coming from before y'all pulled up in y'all boats that had a I'm talking about a,
Child.
so it wasn't there?
They had to find it on the motherland.
Okay, so there you go. You heard it from Sierra.
Wonderful. And as this condition was something so uncommon and novel in English exhibitions, William Dunlop knew a lot of money could be made. However, Sarah Bartmont refused at first, but of course, William remained persistent for her to move, as he knew her display would make him an even wealthier man. Nevertheless, this was not an easy decision, because in the end, she would be exposing herself and her dignity.
Bro, because she signed over to be misrepresented. Sometimes we don't know what we signing up to do until we put up to the equation and we was like, this is going to be a problem for me. Because I didn't sign up for this, you know what I'm saying? So oftentimes that's what it was, you know what I'm saying? And she just been misrepresented. Now, had he represented her the way she needed to be represented?
But this is my thing. This is why I say we need to look more into like the slavery history and the colonial history. I know we've been looking at some of the colonial history, but I feel like we just focus just on the apartheid.
Yeah.
Because they keep on saying they asked her to move or she was forced to move.
Yeah.
They asked her to do this, but he was persistent. If this was during that time, like how were they able to just get her to do these things? That's what I'm kind of stuck on.
More so like it was forced. You know what
But
I'm saying?
he was persistent and
Was that
asking
the
her
truth though?
for her
Because
to move.
oftentimes when they see the power that they already was having over people, do they need permission? You know what I'm saying? Because I'm hearing a lot of questioning about can she? But then you're coming over and y'all taking slaves. So
Well, they did say this was
Where
the
were y'all
beginning of
of
colonial.
colonial, but they did take her people for slavery when she was a baby.
Right.
So she grew up to be a woman at this time, which means it happened even more severely. So where were they when it was like really saying, "Can I get you to come over here?"
Did
You know
they
what I'm
say her
saying?
age?
But she was
I know
actually
she
obviously
died young though.
obviously she was fully developed.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
After much consideration, she decided to go, but under one condition, that Hendrik Cesars came with her. Hendrik, like Sarah, initially refused, but after some time, he agreed. This decision was in large part due to the debts he accumulated from his bad administration on the loans he had taken out. Also, he was not getting paid by clients, so he had to look for another way to generate income. Supposedly, on the 29th of October, 1810, Sarah signed a contract in which she
knew it.
agreed to work as a servant as well as exhibit
it was a
herself
contract
for
before this.
entertainment purposes. Sadly, Sarah was simply being used. First, she was illiterate, and secondly, the contract was in English, so she was unable to read the contents of the document. It's more than likely that she was forced to sign, and of course, she kept no copy of the contract.
I want y'all to hear what he's saying in this video. every time it comes off to where she had an option to do something, he said more than likely she was forced to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep hearing him saying that, and I just want y'all to understand that's what he's saying. That's what
This meant that the men intent on exploiting her were able to modify the contract as they pleased. This allowed them to protect themselves if any legal problems arose, as they had a solid defense.
Yeah.
Despite the men not caring much for her, treating her badly, and exploiting her, there were two benefits in the contract that gave Sarah hope. It stipulated that after 5 years of working with these men, she would be able to return to South Africa, while also receiving a portion of the earnings from the show. In the winter of 1810, the party boarded a ship and made their way to London. Whether Sarah went under her own free will is uncertain, but by this time, she really didn't have a choice. Sarah arrived in London in November 1810, and Dunlop already had things prepared. She was to be exhibited as early as possible. The show was displayed in the Egyptian Hall of Piccadilly Circus. The show consisted of Sarah being locked in a 1.5-meter cage, with William bringing her to stage, and Hendrik as the master of the ceremony. For only 2 shillings, crowds of people would enter Piccadilly to watch Sarah Bartman as an attraction where she sang, walked, and displayed the anomalies of her body to the people who visited. People who attended the show could even poke sticks at her. Even wealthier individuals paid a special fee for private shows at their house reunions. Flyers for the show read, "Saki is 22 years old, is 4 feet 10 inches high, and has a good capacity. She lived in the occupation of a cook at the Cape of Good Hope."
So we did mention that she had to be of age when she went out there, so 22 years old.
Her country is situated not less than 600 miles from the Cape, the inhabitants of which are rich in cattle and sell them by barter for a mere trifle. A bottle of brandy or small roll of tobacco will purchase several sheep. Their principal trade is in cattle skins or tallow. Beyond this nation is another, of small stature, very subtle and fierce. The Dutch could not bring them under subjugation, and shot them whenever they found them. Before long, the African Association,
Wait.
of small stature, very subtle and fierce. The Dutch could not bring them under subjugation, and shot them whenever they found them. Before
Hold
long,
on, let's stop
the
right there. Go back. Just stop. This reminds me of the true story behind Willy Wonka, the Oompa Loompa, Oompa Loompas,
Yeah.
however it's called. That's what that remind me of. It's just so disgusting. Like, put her in a cage, the people could poke her. Now I've heard of this before.
As if she was like an alien
Sarah.
or something.
Yeah, I've heard of Sarah before. I believe they made a movie about her. I don't know if the movie was released, but I do remember seeing like highlights of it. And I also remember that picture being in our history book.
Mm-hmm.
One of the pictures been in the history book, but never went into detail. So
Yeah, her timeline is crazy. Her story is different, you know what I'm saying? So
they looked at
I'm telling y'all, it's more so like she was an alien. It's more
a
so
creature,
like,
yeah.
bro, I mean, if you really want to view it, like when they came to enslave Africans, they was looking at their lifestyles, their writings, how they talked, how they dressed, everything as so, like, shocking. Like, whoa, we gotta be careful. You know what I'm saying? Type of stuff. So it's like, yeah.
of small stature, very subtle and fierce. The Dutch could not bring them under subjugation, and shot them whenever they found them. Before long, the African Association, an abolitionist benevolent society, heard about the ill treatment Sarah was receiving, and decided to take the case to court. One of the main people behind the campaign was Zachary Macaulay, a hugely influential man in the anti-slavery movement, which led to the 1807 Slave Trade Act in England. He was also one of the founders of London University and earned prestige in the city. The trial took place on the 24th of November, 1810. with its main purpose being determining whether Sarah was being exhibited at her own consent or if it was under duress. Despite strong evidence being presented by the association, Sarah stated that she was not under restraint, did not get sexually abused, and had come to London on her own free will.
I mean,
Who wanna sign up to get put in the cage and get poked at and left at, stand there butt naked for free?
and brainwash is a thing too.
Who wanna be conditioned to believe that is okay?
Regardless of if it was in 1812, that's what they said, 1812 or
I'm not
1912.
sure. We gotta go
One
back.
of those. Regardless of when it happened, they're today in 2023. Like, no. But good for him for recognizing that this is what it was and
Yeah,
bringing
yeah.
it to the court of law.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard some slave cases
Mm.
during slavery.
Okay then. Yeah, I just again then he also did mention that we not sure or clear whether she was forced or willingly.
And she says she
But
went
she's
at her own
saying
free will.
she's saying this in front of the judge. All right. Story is not new, but the details of it, you know what I'm saying? It's like I've read up on it everything, but then you always, get a little more deep insight on something that you hear from other perspectives as well.
It should be stated that William Dunlop, her so-called manager, who was more like her owner, was in the room when she made this statement. Furthermore, the written contract which had been signed by Sarah helped their case. In the end, the case was dismissed, meaning William Dunlop and Hendrik Cesars ended up with no charges. The contract was amended either way, and as a result, Sarah became entitled to more profits for her show,
Good.
better clothes, and normal living conditions.
Okay.
Or was she? Records state that the men moved with Sarah to Manchester after this period of trial. So, whether they decided to uphold what was stipulated in the contract remains unknown. Nevertheless, the trial made her shows even more popular. She travelled all over Great Britain and even as far as Ireland. She was even baptised while in Manchester.
All right.
In 1814, William Dunlop died. After Dunlop's death, a man named Henry Taylor brought Sarah to Paris. Henry had been hearing about Sarah's shows for a few years now, as word spread fast in Europe, especially when it was someone as unique as Sarah. Henry thought that the French people could not miss this opportunity to enjoy her presence as a celebrity. She became involved with French society and even had reunions at the famous Café de Paris. Despite Henry doing all of this, a few weeks after having arrived in France, she was sold to an animal trainer called S. Réau, who was known in France for being the founder and professor of comparative anatomy at the Museum of Natural History. In Paris, she was exhibited as if she were a circus animal, being locked in a cage next to other attractions, like baby rhinos. During the shows, Sarah was presented almost naked every time. There is even information suggesting that occasionally a collar was placed on her neck. During this time, Sarah Bartman was in essence enslaved, being exploited to an even greater extent than previously in England. Despite being offered money, she refused to be presented naked, always insisting on wearing a small apron-like garment. There was only one time that she was presented fully naked, and she knew that this was beneath her dignity level. Many scientists in France were intrigued by Sarah, wanting to study her. In particular was the naturalist Georges Cuvier, who along with fellow anatomists, zoologists, and physiologists examined Sarah. Allegedly, Cuvier determined that Sarah was a missing link between animals and humans.
They so dumb.
In Europe, this
They're
was the
so
time
dumb.
when
I'm
racial
sorry.
studies
I
started
can't
to
even keep my laughing. You idiot. The missing link
The
to
missing
what?
link.
To what? To
Cause you ain't seen a big butt before. This reminds me
oh, like the headspace, man. What in the?
of the beginning of gynecology. This reminds me of
studied-
Henrietta Lacks.
Yeah, they did some
Like-
awkward, weird studies, man.
So when people say I don't see color, this is why. This is why. Because if
yo, that is
the missing link,
to human.
if she wasn't,
I mean animals, and it's
if she wasn't subjected to the time that she was in and the country that she was in, if this was someone else, would they have been called the missing link between an animal and a human? Bruh. This is...
It's not even digestive.
I've heard of some bizarre stories before. Stories of history before. Like gynecology.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the syphilis project. But what? The missing link between an animal and a human.
I think
can't
it's
get over that.
terrible to hear what they do to people. Like how they allow them to be in cage and displayed and stuff like that. But I feel like it's worse when you hear what they were thinking. Cause come on, man.
And we would...
Which like your head is saying to you. I was watching a video. You remember the video I was watching when he said they never mind.
What?
Your head told your mouth to say that she is the missing link to animals, or there's a connection.
Animals and humans. The difference between animals and humans.
I can't wrap my head around that.
I can't.
I can't.
And
wrap my
you
head
know
around that.
the crazy part is in 2023 you wouldn't think that people still think this way.
Oh, it's worse. It's worse. I believe so, 100%. Okay.
Yeah, I ain't ready for that conversation.
Rise, and Sarah Bartman could have been one of the reasons for this. Her time in France lasted around 15 months. Unfortunately, throughout this time she lived in terrible conditions, was very miserable, and extremely poor. She was even sexually abused and got impregnated by Esreo. The son was named Okurareo, but he died very young, aged just 5 due to unknown causes. After a long period of travelling and living in inhumane conditions, Sarah Bartman died on the 29th of December 1815 in Paris at the young age of 26. The cause of death remains in debate. Records state that her death was caused by an inflammatory disease derived from a smallpox case, but others say she could have died from alcoholism, pneumonia, or syphilis. After obtaining Sarah Bartman's remains from local authorities, Georges Cuvier dissected her body, trying to discover the cause of death. He also preserved various parts of her corpse. Following her death, Sarah was described as an intelligent woman for her time and culture. As well as her native language, she could speak Dutch fluently and could hold a conversation in both French and English. Her remains were displayed at the Muséum d'Histoire Naturelle d'Angers until 1937, and later in the Musée de l'Homme until 1974. Thanks to years of campaigning and a request from South Africa's former president, Nelson Mandela, Sarah Bartman's remains were finally returned to their native country. With a process lasting 8 years, on the 9th of August 2002, which is also Women's Day in South Africa, Sarah Bartman was buried in the Eastern Cape province, where she belonged.
Yes. Wow.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
This was kind of hard to watch.
Yes, it was very hard to watch. It was hard to listen to. It's hard to see how people are, how heartless they are. Bro, it's like, it's different, man.
So, yeah. Like this video, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell. We have enabled our super thanks if you like to support the channel that way, as well as our reaction request form is in our description box below. We'll see you soon.
Peace.